Welcome back to Cardinal Corner, a podcast created by Cardinal Home Center.
My name is Jack Lombardi, and today I'm joined with Dennis Moneymaker, the store manager at our Greenbrier location in Charlottesville. Today we're going to be talking about painting tips and tricks. So can you start by sharing some insider tips for choosing the right paint colors for different rooms and moods?
When choosing colors for your house, you need to determine, how much light you have coming in, whether you want cooler colors, whether you want warmer colors, cooler colors being grays and blues, and of course your warmer colors are going to be your yellows and your oranges and your reds. When I'm picking a color for a house or a room, you always got to try to see what's going in there as far as furniture, drapes. Because if your homeowner's doing it, painting the wall is probably the cheapest way to fix something. You know what I mean? If you buy $6,000 furniture and you come in and paint your wall the wrong color, it's easier to paint your wall again than to buy a new couch. So just determine what you want, how you want it to look, whether you want grays or neutrals. There's several colors in our color palette that are neutral that will go with anything. So it's all, personal preference on what you really want.
Awesome, super helpful. How can homeowners effectively prep their walls and surfaces before painting to ensure a smooth and lasting finish?
You can check your walls for blemishes, for cracks, for any peeling paint, any holes, which it would be from hanging pictures or water damage that make spacklings you can fill your holes in with. Sanding your walls after you've fixed every little thing has a big outcome on how they look when it's done. Going back to prep is everything. I mean, you can have the best paint in the world, but if your walls are really rough and they're not sanded down, you're not going to achieve what you want to achieve. It does help by having a good paint, but if your walls are not, if they're previously painted and they're real bumpy, like that comes from using a rougher mat, get you a pole sander and sand it with some honey grit and smooth it down, and you'll be surprised on how good they look when the paint's dry on them.
So sand your walls.
Sand your walls.
Um, can you discuss the importance of primer a little bit and when it should be used in painting projects?
Mhm. Primer should be used on raw sheetrock or raw drywall when you have existing smoke damage, nicotine damage on your wall, water damage. There's specific primers used for each one of them for covering up so they don't bleed through. I would say on a color change on your wall, depending on what colors you're doing, primers are sometimes needed for that. Of course, Benjamin Moore has paints that have primers in them. Mostly all of them do. So very rarely would you prime your wall if you're making a color change. Um, I would suggest buying a high quality paint and achieving that with two coats. Because if you think you got to prime your wall just because you're changing the color, then you got to prime it and then you got to put two coats on after that. So it's going to really save the homeowner a step if they
Right.
use a high quality paint.
Nicotine damage. I didn't even know that was a thing.
Hmm.
What are some time-saving techniques or hacks for speeding up the painting process without sacrificing quality?
If you're painting a room and you don't really like painting, to say you want to speed it up, the better paint you buy, like the Aura, can speed you up because it takes less coats to do it. We get a lot of people who come in here and all they buy is ore because they say it covers in one coat. And I've seen it cover one coat. So as far as speeding up a painting project without sacrificing the end product, I would say buy better paint. Or would be the answer to that. Yep,
So,
inside or out.
so it's almost like the better quality stuff you end up buying,
Yeah,
the easier the,
the
the
easier it
process
is.
is.
Exactly right.
You get what you pay for, I guess.
Yep.
So what are some lesser known tips for minimizing paint drips, streaks, or brush marks during the painting process?
It's gonna sound funny,
You're good.
but a lot of people make the mistake when they paint is what they call dry rolling. When you're painting a wall and you hear that shh, shh,
Hmm.
a lot, that's called dry rolling. That tells you that there's not enough paint on the roller or on the brush.
Hmm.
I would say key to that would be Make sure your rollers and your brushes are full of paint. Not too much paint to where it drips. But when you're rolling, you want to hear that smooth sound, not that that you get when you're dry rolling. Because what'll happen is you get all the way around the room and you'll see roller marks everywhere. That comes from not putting enough paint on your wall while you're doing it.
Right. Okay, that makes
Does
sense.
that make sense?
Yeah.
Brush your stain on and come back with a rag and wiping it until it's consistently even all the way through. Let it dry. A lot of people make the mistake of not letting the stain dry enough. I always say 24 to 36 hours before you put a urethane over top of it. Because if you put a urethane over top of a floor or anything you stain too early, it can lift the stain back off. It's called re-wetting, and then you'll get blotchiness everywhere in your floor. So that's key right there. And then when you finish it with a urethane, I would always do 3 coats. All the cans say 2 hours between coats, but that's under perfect drying conditions. And we know in this world nothing's perfect. So I always stretch it out to 4 to 6 hours. Lightly sand in between each coat with some 240 sandpaper. But then again, when you sand it, you want to make sure you run your hand across it. You don't feel any bumps, any blemishes, because if you do feel them, you will see them in your finish. So repeat that process twice, and on your last coat, as it dries down, it should level out and look flawless.
Awesome. And I know you just touched on this a little bit just now, but can you provide some insights into maintaining and prolonging the general lifespan of a painted or stained floor surface?
Let's go back to painted floors. Nothing is indestructible. Everything can be scratched or peeled. Be careful when you're moving furniture across it, because if you move something heavy and it does scratch it, once you break that surface and any type of moisture gets where it's scratched, it's going to start popping up everywhere. So my thing would be, if you're moving something on it, to make sure you have sliders or put something down so it doesn't scratch it. And keeping it clean, should make a floor last a long time. Outside floors, you can't do nothing about the weather. Weather is the biggest issue on exterior floors and their failure. And I've seen floors outside painted for 5, 6 years and look great. And just last year, I've seen a floors done on a deck that were done correctly. Snow piled up on it for several weeks at a time. Eventually, will soak through the coating and pop it up. So it's maintenance on the homeowner too. If it's snow on it or ice, you want to get it off as soon as you can. When you're shoveling it off, you want to make sure you don't try to chip the paint or whatever. There's always going to be touching up from here to there. But that's pretty much it.
Cool.
Thanks for tuning in today. If you want to learn more about what we talked about, you can visit our website at cardinalcornerpodcast.com.